So what's been great about this conversation is we've been able to talk about the way Katali is thinking about redistributing wealth and power, the way Adesina has been thinking about redistributing wealth and power. I'm also curious to hear, how is Tara Health thinking about it as well? Like, as you guys move to your spend out, what is the work looking like?
Before I came on as a board member, Tara already had this perspective about relinquishing power and moving resources, assets into the communities of intended impact. I was really only interested in joining a board where that was a focus. And so that was a big positive for me. But when we first came on the board, what we realized was that we had this really interesting structure in place where the living donor to the organization still held this like absolute power over the board, where she could kind of dismiss board members at will, replace them, etc. And we actually read the bylaws before coming on, and we just had this conversation at one of our very first board meetings that are like, wait, you asked us to be with you through this spend out, transferring wealth and power, but there's this weird, it's kind of called a single member structure set up where that's not sharing and redistributing power with the people that you've brought onto the board to support you in this work and to be part of this work. And we had a really sweet conversation about why that was there to begin with. It brings me back to this concept of like, we should really interrogate protecting what's precious, because that can be an excuse for a lot of harm and entrenching and hoarding power. But there may be actually something precious to protect. And in that case, we realized that the living donor had set that in place a long time ago, hadn't been back to kind of like look at the legal structure, really did want to make some changes, and ultimately wanted to hear from us, oh, I won't be the last person left holding everything when we actually spend out. You're going to actually stay with me to the end of this? Oh, okay, I'm ready to share this. So it was about like, well, what's precious, making sure that there is holding for the organization all the way until the end. But what's not precious is the centralizing of power in one person. One of the most interesting things that we've discovered is that maybe it's not about relinquishing power. We can be ready to relinquish power, right, and move the money and all of the decision making. But we actually had grantee partners come back to us and say, yes, we understand that you're relinquishing power, but we still need those networks and we still need sounding boards for certain things. And you are our partners in this work, and we kind of feel dropped. Isn't that interesting? That, it's that the relinquishing language was maybe not as powerful as doing a real shift and transformation in power, and like being intentional about staying engaged and in a relationship that supports that transfer.
I would love to kind of weave back to a piece that we started to talk about in our conversation, because in the example that you just shared, right, the board member, it sounded like the board member had a fear that others were not going to step in with her to see this through spend out, and so never went back and revisited the bylaws. But when you all leaned into trust and relationship and community, it felt then like, oh, I don't have to hold this alone, right? This is actually something that we're all holding together. And in doing so, in leaning into the relationship and trust, it actually created the possibility for something else to happen. Another thing that I experience in my work around supporting wealthy people and organizations and redistributing their wealth is that there's a fear that because so much of how they've been engaged has been about a wealthy person or a wealthy organization, and that the capital that they have or can give to others is therefore construed as their value to the movement or to community, that they feel the need to hold on to that even just a little bit tighter in order to experience some sense of belonging.
That's their ticket to admission,
right,
to the community. I can understand why you feel that way.
And so in the example that you're sharing, the grantees are actually lifting up, no, we actually care about you as a person. We care about you as an organization. And there's still a role of belonging for you. There's still an important purpose for you to play here in terms of, yes, redistributing your resources, but also share your networks, share your skills, be in it with us. And so I think it's just an interesting way for us to open up what the possibilities can be as we think about wealth redistribution and understanding that it's, yes, about the capital, but not only about the capital, and our ability to support those institutions and people, and also understanding their unique role and their value and their deservedness of belonging in our movement is something that persists beyond just the wealth redistribution.